The call of the Hogs can be heard all the way to San Francisco.
You're listening to Pod at the Palace with Curtis Wilkerson on Inside Arkansas.
Good morning, everybody. Happy game day. Woo, buddy. We got a big one at Bud Walton Arena tonight. Are y'all excited? I am. I'm more excited to get over to Bud for this game than I've been in a long time. And I got the feeling a lot of people feel that way. Oh, man, what a difference a week can make, right? Arkansas returns home white hot after sweeping a road swing at Kentucky, Rupp Arena, at Texas, at the Moody Center, and now they face number 3 Alabama at home. It's going to be a doozy. A 7:30 tip on ESPN for if anybody didn't get the memo, you probably did by now. This was scheduled for a 7 p.m. tip. They moved it back a half hour to accommodate Luka Doncic's debut with the Lakers. And it turns out he's not even playing in that game. So basically, they just moved it back a half hour for no good reason. But that's where we're at. Either way, I don't think it's going to affect anything. I think we're about to see a sold-out and sauced-up home court advantage, and I'm here for it. The 6-man in full effect at Bud Walton Arena. That place is going to be an absolute buzzsaw, and it needs to be. It absolutely needs to be. Arkansas is going to need every bit of a home court advantage they can get because they're facing a really, really good team. But they got a great opportunity. They're playing with house money, right? I mean, this is the week from hell when we looked at the schedule. Road swing at Kentucky and Texas, and you get Bama, arguably the toughest game on your schedule coming into the year at least. We all looked at that 3-game stretch going, whew, like Cal after that Michigan win. Whew. I mean, can you get one, please? They won the first 2. So this is a free shot here at Alabama for Arkansas. And it's going to be tough, man. NATO's squad, they're good. I've never seen, Andrew and I have talked about this a lot on Inside Arkansas Live. I have never seen a team coming off a Final Four with a bunch of pieces back, preseason number 1, balling out, flying under the radar, the way that Alabama has here. And it's crazy. I mean, you look at them, they're 19-3 overall. They're 8-1 in SEC play. It's the best team Arkansas has faced so far this season, according to the analytics. And it's like nobody's talking about them. It's Auburn, rightfully so. It's Duke and Cooper Flag, but nobody's saying anything about Alabama, and they're just quietly cruising like on the path to a 1 seed. Arkansas might have something to say about that tonight. We'll find out. 4 straight wins for the Tide in this series against Arkansas. And Eric Musselman did not like that one bit. I've talked about it. Like I've just kind of been ingrained over the last several years to have a little bit of hatred, playful hatred, in the heart for Alabama because, listen, Muss didn't like Nate Oates. Nate Oates didn't like Muss. That thing was heated. There was a rivalry there. And when he would lose to Alabama, didn't matter what else they did. I mean, they would win 12 out of 13 in an SEC slate, but they'd have a 1-point road loss at Alabama, and Muss would talk about that the rest of the season. We'd be at the Sweet 16, getting ready to watch Arkansas play Gonzaga or something. He'd be like, that Alabama game. It got to him, man. And so there's just something about it hasn't changed for me just because the coach has. And speaking of the coaching change, while Alabama has won 4 in a row against Arkansas, John Calipari and 3 of his current starters here for the Razorbacks beat the brakes off of Alabama last year. And I think it's relevant because they have a lot of the same players. They got some new guys in the mix there. Alabama does, but you're still going to see Mark Sears. You're still going to see Grant Nelson. You're still going to see Jaron Stevenson. A lot of familiar faces over there. So I think that type of, sometimes you don't want to look back into the past and be like, oh yeah, whatever. They had success against a team, but it's an entirely different cast of characters. Not so much. In this case, they scored 117 on Alabama last year. Kentucky did. And I know what you're thinking. Like, oh yeah, I'm sure Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham did all that. Well, they played their roles, but it wasn't crazy. It was a quiet game for DJ Wagner over there, matched up with Player of the Year candidate Mark Sears, which he will be again. 4 points, 4 assists, nothing crazy, whatever. But Adu Thero scored a dozen in that game. And Big Z, that might have been his best performance last year. Everybody remembers his debut against Georgia. He kind of went nuts there in a short spurt. He played really well the second game against Arkansas. But against Alabama last year, Big Z, he went for 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 blocks. He looked really good in there. And the way he's been playing so far, do that again, right? Repeat that, big fella. Sign us up for that. And those aren't the only three who have experience against Alabama. And this is important because they're different, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But Jonas Adu, obviously he's been in the SEC. At Tennessee last year, they played against Alabama twice. Adu had a lot of success against him. 15.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game in 2 outings against Alabama last year. So he's found success against those guys. The one piece to the rotation right now for Arkansas that you're really looking at going, dang, man, if they could just get some more out of him, you start to really feel good about where Arkansas is headed. You already do. But if you can complement what Z brings to the table with Jonas's skill set when he's right, just defensively even, with some rim protection and rebounding in there, that could really change things. That could make Arkansas a better team significantly. They keep saying he's 100%. His minutes keep going down and down. Some of that is because you just have to have – remember when Boogie went down, we were talking about it, like you got to have Z on the floor as much as possible for the spacing, the three-point shooting when you don't have Boogie. I think that's part of it, but it's not the reason why he's only playing 4 minutes now. So we'll see about that. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. And Jonas isn't even the only one outside of the Kentucky guys. Trevin, don't forget about him. Arkansas went there and scored. What was that game, like 92-88 or something? It was kind of a shootout. The end of the regular season. That might have went to overtime last year. Arkansas almost went in there and got him. And Trevin played really well in that game. Remember he shut it down for a while with the knee soreness and the inflammation. Then he came back, and this was right before the SEC tournament. And he looked as good as he had all year. He had 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks in that game in Tuscaloosa. So you got 5 guys in your rotation there who have played against Alabama, who are familiar with their personnel and their style of play, which is different, right? They play the fastest tempo in the country. They get up and down. Threes or layups offensively. It's high octane. It's chaotic. And it's difficult to prepare for, and it's something that you can't replicate. Arkansas certainly can't replicate it. They don't have enough bodies to replicate it in practice, but at least those guys are familiar with it. They're not going to be surprised. They're not going to be taken back by it, so it shouldn't be a situation where you get out there and it takes you until the first media timeout to adjust, but you're already down 11-2 or something. They should be up for that. So we'll see. Bama, they're a weird team because they've been winning so many games, but not necessarily dominating. They're vulnerable on the road. Like they're fairly consistently in very close games when they go on the road. Just looking at their results away from home this season in hostile territory, they lost at Purdue. No shame in that. They nearly lost at North Dakota. Y'all remember that game early in the year? It was like 87-80 or something, way closer than it should have been. I know why they went there. It was because of Grant Nelson, but that was an interesting game to put on your schedule, and it nearly got them. They won comfortably at North Carolina, who we now know is a terrible basketball team. In SEC play, though, they opened up fine. They went and smacked up South Carolina, beat them by 20. But ever since then, they won by 6 at Texas A&M when they didn't have Wade Taylor. That game went down to the final minutes. They won by 5 at Kentucky at Rupp Arena. Arkansas won by 10 over there. It went down to the final minutes. They won by 4 at Mississippi State. Final possessions in that game. Those are all quality wins. They figured it out. They closed them. But competitive basketball games that were up for grabs down the stretch. And if you're Arkansas, that's the exact same position you want to be into. Be in a position to go out there and win the game at the final media timeout. And just see what happens. Like we said, it's a free shot for Arkansas here. If they, it's not a can't lose situation for Arkansas here. You can I know that they dropped 6 games in SEC play already, and you're looking at it going, they gotta win this, gotta win that. They can't rack up all that's true. This is one that you can absorb though and be fine. If they lose to Alabama, it's not going to hurt them. They're not going to all of a sudden just drop off the map in terms of the bubble conversation or whatever. But by God, if you beat them, there's no more question about are they in or not. You are. You've successfully played your way back into the field, and then you take it from there. This would be huge. Then all of a sudden, I mean, if you look at it, and Arkansas's got, a win over Bama, at Kentucky, at Tennessee, neutral over Michigan, you're looking at Arkansas's resume going, that stacks up really well with other teams that are in the tournament. Maybe not the Auburns of the world who have 18 quad one wins or whatever the heck it is. But you start looking at those wins and comparing them to other bubble teams or other teams seated in that 8, 9, 10 range, you feel pretty good about where you're at. They got to do it though, and it's going to be a tall task. How do you beat Alabama? I went through and looked at the patterns in their 3 losses, which are at Purdue. They lost to Oregon at that NIL tournament in Vegas, and then they lost by 10 at home to Ole Miss. That was the same night that Arkansas lost at LSU. We were at Brothers Meat House watching that going, what the heck is going on here? Some patterns that emerged. In all 3 games, the teams that Bama was playing had single-digit turnovers. They took care of the basketball. And that's something that Arkansas has done a really, really good job of, averaging single-digit turnovers since DJ Wagner took over a point guard. Imagine that. It's going to be important again. And if you look at Alabama, they don't turn you over. We'll get into that in a minute, but that's not a strength of theirs. I think I mentioned yesterday, they kind of remind me of like Kentucky is maybe the minor league version of them, where they play the same style. They have the same tendencies. They do the threes or layups thing. Neither one of them are great defensively. Kentucky's awful defensively. Alabama's okay, but they're not great. I think they're just like 40th or something nationally. So they're fine, but they're not elite by any means defensively. The difference is Bama's just way, way more talented and athletic than Kentucky is playing that style. So it's kind of interesting that they don't turn over teams that much, right? The other pattern in those losses, in all 3 games, a front court player for the opponent has got off on them. It was Trey Kaufman-Renn for Purdue. It was Nate Biddle, their post player at Oregon, and it was Malik Dia. We remember him for Ole Miss. Those guys got off on him. So what does that mean for Arkansas? Could it be Big Z? And he's already had a big game against Alabama in the past. Could he replicate? Could that be a tough cover for him? Could it be Thero at the 4? Because if I was Arkansas and I had Thero match up against Grant Nelson, that looks like barbecue chicken to me. I'm attacking that every single time I get the opportunity. So we'll see. Another thing that stood out to me in those 3 losses for Alabama, Mark Sears went a combined 3 of 21 from 3. And he's a really, really good player, but 3 of 21 in those 3 games from 3. Okay. And then they had 44 turnovers combined in those 3 games. They had 20. They turned it over 21 times against Ole Miss. Their turnover numbers are going to naturally be a little bit higher. Why? Because they play so fast. They have more possessions, more opportunities to turn that thing over. That's kind of part of the deal. But that is something that has bit them at times this season. A couple things when you look at the SEC only stats that stand out with Alabama. Offensively, they're top 5 in every category, all the shooting metrics, all that, except turnover percentage. They're 12th out of 16. So you can get some turnovers. And I think that's going to be important for Arkansas in a weird game where they need to probably try to slow the game as much as they can. But they also need to pick their spots to get out and get some easy ones in transition. It's going to be important for the offense. Turning them over is a good way to do that. Defensively, they're 15th in turnovers forced and steal percentage in the SEC. They, as chaotic as they play, as fast as they play, as athletic as they are, they just don't force many turnovers. And that's a good omen, I think, for Arkansas. If it's about them being focused more than it's Bama just dictating things. Like Ole Miss is going to turn you over. Missouri is going to turn you over. Bama doesn't do that. And it's nuts because of the size that they have. They're very average in terms of rim protection, despite all the length that they have in there. So this is a game that Arkansas theoretically should be able to get in the paint, maybe score it with some success down there, or draw some fouls, right? When you think Alabama, what do you think? Threes, right? That's the first thing that comes to your mind. They're going to chuck them no matter what. And so automatically it's like, well, what's the key to the game? Oh, we got to defend the 3. Yes, absolutely. Sure. 100%. They come make 15 threes. They're going to beat you. but I think it's dictating the manner in which they occur, the type of threes that they take, right? Because really, I think a lot of people would probably agree with this. The best part of Alabama's offense is getting in the paint off the bounce. They drive it on you because they're so athletic. They got good one-on-one players. And then they kick it out for rhythm driving kicks. So shutting off that water, keeping them out of the paint is going to be really important. Transition. They fly down the floor. You've got to be matched up. You have to pick up and avoid some of those transition threes. The reloads, right? They're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. And the reason why is because they shoot so many threes, it creates a lot of long rebounds, right? A lot of long rebounds. So they're able to get it, kick it out for those reload threes and knock them down. You got to avoid those. You got to be able to anticipate that a little bit. It's crazy because Alabama's only shooting 33.6% from three. That's lower than Arkansas. And we say the Razorbacks can't shoot, right? So if you can contain their number of attempts to a degree, or just dictate the ones they take, if they're eyeing you up and pulling up in your face off the dribble and knocking them down, shake their hand. Congratulations, you did it. But if you can knock out some of those easy ones that they get, well, okay. It's kind of interesting. I think their starting lineup might be their worst lineup in my mind. Because they'll start Mark Sears, they'll start Youngblood at the other guard position, who's the South Florida transfer. He was hurt at the beginning of the year. He's playing now. And those are their two best shooters, obviously, in that lineup. And then they start 3, 6, 11 forwards who can't shoot. In Jaron Stevenson, Grant Nelson, and then Big Cliff Omayuri from Rutgers. It's kind of an interesting lineup. When they get into their bench, I think they become a little bit more dangerous in there. LeBaron Filan's a really, really good freshman guard that they'll play. That's kind of popped. One of the better freshmen, I think, in the SEC. Aiden Holloway, the Auburn transfer, has really, really blossomed in that system. They get those guys in the backcourt with Sears or whatever. That's when it becomes really problematic, I think, at least. They got Mo Diabute, who they'll put in there at the 4. Sometimes they'll drop then Grant Nelson down to the 5, and then they become really difficult to guard. The drop-off is they don't have Big Cliff in there for rim protection. They're not as good defensively. So they're still mixing and matching and trying a bunch of different things. They'll play, 10 guys throughout the course of the game, pretty significant minutes. As I'm looking at it right now, Mark Sears leads them at 32 minutes per game. Grant Nelson's playing 27. Then you look at the rest of the guys in the rotation, 21.5, 23.3, 23.1, 18.1, 17.1, 18.2. So pretty good rotation in there. How is Arkansas going to stay fresh enough? They're going to have to be strategic, maybe calling a timeout before the media. I think getting to the free throw line is a good opportunity for them to be able to kind of, catch your breath a little bit there, get downhill some, because they're going to keep running fresh bodies at you, man. And you got to be able to keep playing at 100% intensity and tempo. When they go with the 3 forward look out of the gates, I wonder what Arkansas is going to do. Right? Like, do you counter it and you slide Thero to the 3 and you play Trevin and Big Z? Or do you just tell Carter Knox, like, hey, good luck with Jaron Stevenson or Grant Nelson there? And then, hey, they've got to guard you on the other end. I wonder what they're going to do. I do think we'll see more of the big lineup. It'll probably depend on how Arkansas is rebounding, controlling the defensive glass early in the game. A few other keys real quick, maybe outside of what we mentioned with the 3-point shooting. Containing Mark Sears, like we said, he's struggled in their losses. 3 of 21 from 3 in those 3 games. He's also been held to 15 or fewer points in Bama's 3 losses. This is a guy who's averaging about 20. He scored more than 20 in 13 games this year. So can you keep him under that? Dictating tempo, that's just so easier said than done. But like we said, you can't afford a track meet necessarily with these guys. Pick your spots to run, but the more deliberate they're able to be, the more they can make this to a half-court game is going to be key. And then obviously transition defense will be really, really important. We mentioned those offensive rebounds and reload threes. The anticipation there for Arkansas, anticipating those long rebounds, and instead of crashing all the way to the rim, not getting as deep, right? Because knowing that ball is going to come off the rim a little bit and maybe a little bit further back than normal, be something to keep an eye on there. And, I think some calculated gambling defensively to try to force some turnovers because you need that. Alabama's good for it. Can you use that to kind of fuel a few things in transition for you while also controlling the tempo? There's a fine line to be had there. So we'll see what it looks like for Arkansas. Mentioned, I think, with Thero just attacking whatever matchup he has in there. And then can you get productive double-digit minutes out of Jonas Adu? It's just the one thing that I feel like they're missing right now. And, with a team as athletic and as good on the glass as Alabama, if you could just get the defensive rebounding, a little bit of rim protection from him, can you get 12 to 15 minutes out of him without it being a liability out there? I think that could go a long, long way for Arkansas in this game. We'll see what it looks like. And I think don't settle for the threes. Just because Alabama's out there bombing them, you feel like you got to keep up pace. No, play your game. Continue to be selective from threes. Take the good ones. Don't force them. Weather the storms. Get downhill. Get to the free throw line. Right? Like I said, the way I'm looking at this game, Arkansas's already won the first two in this week from hell. So they're playing with house money, man. You got a free shot here at Alabama. Loss doesn't kill you, but it is one you can still absorb. But it just, a win puts you in such excellent position. It really does, which is crazy after getting off to the worst start in SEC play in program history. The Hogs are 14th in the SEC standings right now. Even after winning these games, you're like, gosh, man, they're a game away. They're a game out from being in the top 8. Like, that's how close this thing is here to being a completely different type of story. And then you want to talk about the resume boost outside of winning at Auburn. This is the best potential resume steroid booster left on the schedule. Real quick, I wanted to pull up and see if they've dropped a line yet. I'm recording this on Friday, obviously. It goes out Saturday morning for game day. I don't see the official line. I do see that Alabama's minus 260, Arkansas's plus 200 on the money line there. So, probably a 5-point underdog at home, whatever. See, it's going to be crazy. Looking forward to it. And then, as always, we're looking forward to the Pod the Palace post-game show afterwards. Hopefully, it's another happy one. We're getting used to doing these after wins. It's a lot more fun than after losses. But Andrew Ellis and I will be here to cover it all. So make sure you tap in with us. Get subscribed to Inside Arkansas YouTube channel. And buckle up. Enjoy the game. We'll see you guys afterward. This has been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas. Y'all have a good one.